Hello and welcome to Channels Television's special program on June 12, Democracy Day. I am Ladi Akeredoluali.
And I'm Millicent Walker. In a country as exceptionally diverse as Nigeria, today we celebrate and honor the struggles and sacrifices on the long path towards democracy and to the country's continuing progress.
In June of 2018, President Muhammadu Buhari announced that Democracy Day will be celebrated every 12th of June starting in 2019. The holiday had previously been observed on May 29. So as it stands, since it's a new date, this year marks the 4th of Democracy Day celebrated on June 12. Today marks 23 years of Nigeria's return to civil rule, and 1999 to date is generally referred to as the country's fourth republic. The first, the second, and third were all interjected and punctuated by military coups.
On June 24, 1993, the Third Republic was truncated by the annulment of the June 12, 1993 presidential election, an action that created a chain of events which led to the inauguration of Chief Ernest Shonekan's interim national government, which itself was toppled in a coup by General Sani Abacha on November 17, 1993.
General Abdulsalami Abubakar midwifed the birth of the Fourth Republic when he handed power over to former head of state Olusegun Obasanjo on May 29, 1999, after the successful general election of that year.
And since the 1999 transitional elections, however, there have not been any military interventions, unlike what's been happening in our neighboring countries like Guinea-Bissau, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. Our next report highlights the celebration of Democracy Day in Nigeria.
Fellow Nigerians,
it's the President's last Democracy Day broadcast as Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and it begins by highlighting the nation's challenging journey to uninterrupted democracy. It therefore asks Nigerians to ensure the 2023 general elections are peaceful in honor of the sacrifice of Chief MKO Abiola and others.
We must never forget the sacrifices of the heroes of Nigeria's democracy during 1993. Their patriotism and peaceful struggle should guide our actions, especially when it comes to electing our leaders and holding them accountable now and in future. Fellow Nigerians, this is my last Democracy Day speech as your president. By June 12, 2023, exactly 1 year from today, you will already have a new president. I remain committed and determined to ensure that the new president is elected through a peaceful and transparent process.
President Buhari commends the maturity exhibited by the political class during the primaries while assuring citizens of a credible electoral process.
I will therefore take this opportunity on this very special day to ask all candidates to continue running issue-focused campaigns and to treat opponents with dignity. The tone you set at the top will surely be replicated in your followers. Your right to choose your government will be preserved and protected. I am also promising you a free, fair, and transparent electoral process.
With a brutal killing at the St. Francis Catholic Church in Owo, Ondo State, and citizens still held captive following the attack on an Abuja-Kaduna-bound train in March this year, among other security issues, President Buhari commits to ensuring their safe release.
On this official day, I want us all to put all victims of terrorist activities in our thoughts and prayers. I am living daily with the grief and worry for all those victims and prisoners of terrorism and kidnapping. I and the security agencies are doing all we can to free those unfortunate countrymen and countrywomen safely. For those who have lost their lives, we will continue to seek justice for their families against the perpetrators. For those currently in captivity, we will not stop until they are freed and their kidnappers are brought to justice.
With these promises by the president, all eyes are now on the federal government to walk the talk to further rebuild citizens' trust in their leaders.
Boko Haram is not only the security issue bedeviling our country. The spate of kidnappings, armed robberies, herdsmen farmers clashes, cattle rustlings, all help to add to the general air of insecurity in our land. We are going to erect and maintain an efficient, disciplined, people-friendly, and well-compensated security forces within an overall security architecture.
These words gave Nigerians hope that the menace of Boko Haram was coming to an end, the kidnapped Chibok girls will be rescued from captivity, and insecurity will be a thing of the past under this administration. 7 years down the line, conflicting arguments have been raised as to how well the Buhari government has fared security-wise.
Nigeria failed to, over the years and over the decades, make the right investments in security architecture as to be able to take into account the changing dynamics in terms of security, the growing number of the growing population of the country. All these things, these dynamics, all these factors were not taken into account in terms of making sure that our security architecture is growing even as our population is growing and even as there are new security threats that are emerging.
The beginning of insecurity in Nigeria starts with the stealing of public money by governors, the local government funds. As far as any government cannot address this, there would be insecurity because money will not be in circulation.
To further boost the fight, budgetary allocations to security sector rose by over 100% since 2015, from less than 1 trillion naira to 2.4 trillion naira, leading to the acquisition of equipment such as the Super Tucanos from the United States and armored tanks from the UAE, amongst others, and the launch of various operations in all regions to deal decisively with security threats. That notwithstanding, issues of banditry in the northwest, Boko Haram in the northeast, IPOB agitation in the southeast, farmer-herder clashes in the north-central, piracy in the south-south, and mob actions among the citizenry, leading to loss of lives, loss of revenue due to sit-at-home orders, and kidnap of traveling citizens continues unabated.
We are calling on Mr. President, President Muhammad Buhari, the service chiefs, the head of security agencies, national and international human rights organizations to rescue our families.
Our soldiers are carrying AK-47. Bandits are carrying AK-56, AK-58. There's no match. The AK-47 has a range. It gets to that range, by 100 meters, it drops, and there's no fire again. Even when it hits you, it seems as if a stone hits you after that range. And people are carrying AK-56, AK-58, that speeds 100 bullets in seconds, and the bullets go about 1 kilometer, 2 kilometers. So people are treating the symptoms. They're not really treating what the roots of the causes. They are not.
These problems are not created overnight, so it's going to take some time for us to be able to actually get to where we need to be. Nigerian army is less than 170,000, and they're spread thin all over the country, and that is not their official constitutional responsibility. Their official constitutional responsibility is the territorial, defense of the country. But now we have them engaged in law enforcement, thereby abandoning their constitutional responsibility.
While the lack of political will has been blamed for Nigeria's inability to stem the tide, experts also say external factors are also contributing.
Barack Obama, for instance, as even an African president in the US, refused to give Nigeria any assistance, which was very suspect. What they call him, Donald Trump came, the same thing. If we had gotten American help in terms of equipment, in terms of military intelligence, in terms of know-how, maybe we would have been able to surmount this insurgency.
With technology solving many challenges facing the world, security surely is one aspect Nigerians will like to see added to a list of other sectors to witness a turnaround after its deployment.
These terrorists and bandits that attack places like Kaduna, after their attack, immediately they run back into the forest. Now, the Nigerian army and the Nigerian government can deploy technologies like drones. You have drones that can be in the air for 72 hours, surveilling the whole forest.
Former President Olusegun Obasanjo says anyone hoping to occupy the presidential seat and lead Nigeria out of its current security challenge must possess a certain quality.
Passion means being mad about Nigeria, having a touch of madness.
371 votes. Perhaps the next president come June the 12th, 2023 will heed this advice when he or she takes the reign. But while we wait, the Buhari presidency must keep trying to fulfill its constitutional mandate of protecting lives and property. Victor Matthias, Channels Television News.
Welcome back. It's still Channels Television's special program on Democracy Day, giving hope to Nigerians. Remember that you can follow the conversation on our social media handle at Channels TV on Twitter, at Channels TV on Instagram, and it's streaming live on our YouTube channel. And you can watch us as well in the United Kingdom on Sky 518.
As Nigeria continues to confront multiple security threats, insecurity is deepening in the northern and southern parts of the country. According to the Armed Conflict Location and Event Data Project 2021, there was a 22% increase in the number of organized political violence events in Nigeria. The violence resulted in over 9,900 reported fatalities, nearly a 30% increase compared to 2020.
Indeed. The report also says that the threat posed by Islamist militants in the northeast shifted in 2021 and persisted in spite of ongoing military operations to counter the insurgency, with the Islamic State of West Africa, ISWAP, Lake Chad faction gaining more power and influence. Now, joining us to give answers to some of the questions relating to insecurity and the military's role in mitigating the menace is Nigeria's #1 military officer, the Chief of Defense Staff, General Lucky Irabor. Welcome to the program, General, and good afternoon. Happy Democracy Day to you.
Good afternoon, Ladi. A happy Democracy Day. I'm delighted to be here. And
Thank you.
I appreciate Nigerians.
Thank you for your time. Now, from the last June 12, let's take it for about a year, from the last June 12 celebration till now, how would you assess the country's security situation?
Well, before I come to assess the security situation, I'd like to crave your indulgence to congratulate Nigerians for over 2 decades of unbroken democracy in Nigeria, and to equally appreciate and commend members of the armed forces, both serving and retired, for realizing the need for democracy and putting it into context, knowing that democracy is a process and every one of us needs to keep our eyes on the ball in order for us to indeed achieve the desired development and progress of our nation. Now, back to your question, which has to do with assessing security situation from the last June 12th Democracy Day celebration of 2021 till now. I will say that a lot has happened, quite a lot of improvement in terms of the armed forces and other security agencies doing all that is necessary to bring peace to the various troubled regions of the country. And I know that even though you've just given some snippets of some reports, I can tell you that from last year to now, we have had quite a lot of improvements from the northeast to the northwest, north central, south, southeast, and southwest. Of course, there still remains a long haul in terms of addressing the nuances that attend to insecurity in Nigeria.
Given that scenario, General, many of those listening to you will shake their heads and say they don't see any signs that things have indeed improved. I mean, if we take a couple of examples, not to go too far, you have what happened just over a week ago or so now in Irabor in Ondo State. Before that, in March, you had the Kaduna train incident, of which only yesterday or thereabouts, 11 of the 62 people who were kidnapped were released. That means about just over 50 of them are still in captivity more than 2 months later. And there are several other examples. There was the brutal killing of the House of Assembly member in Anambra State, the member representing Governor Chukwuma Soludo's constituency. So if we take just, some of these examples, there will be those who will argue that there's no sign of this improvement. So perhaps you want to speak to that and explain to them what you mean by improvement.
Well, thank you. No doubt there are incidences that have occurred which, of course, manifest insecurity across the country. It would be foolhardy for anyone to think that we have, achieved our end state. No, we have not. And this, of course, I need to categorically state. But what you must understand is that with these events or incidences which you've just enumerated, there are hundreds and thousands more that have been eliminated. Perhaps you may not know that just only the same week you are talking about the Irabor incident, in Kano, for example, given the intelligence available to defense and security agencies, we were able to botch what would have been the most catastrophic incidents within our country. And in that operation, we indeed recovered IEDs, that is, improvised explosive devices making materials. We recovered large quantum of arms and ammunition and other materials which, of course, the criminals were intending to use in various parts of the country, including Abuja. We equally, of course, have had both covert and overt operations across the parts of Nigeria, ensuring that the ignoble intentions of the criminals amongst us are not brought to fruition. That the Irabor incident happened, and of course the few incidents which you touched on, does not imply that improvements have not happened. Let me perhaps state that peace is a process. Peace is not an end state. And if, of course, you could take a look at the war stage, countries around the world, you'll find incidents of violence and criminality in one way or the other. But that does not mean that we should not put what is happening within our country in focus and ensure that we take all measures necessary such that we get to a stage where we'll be recording 0 incidents. And I believe that that is possible, and that's precisely what we're working at.
And General, some analysts have said that, there appears to be a trend of militant expansion to territories in which, they had largely not been present previously. What can you tell us about the extent of ISWAP in Nigeria and Boko Haram on the other hand?
Well, ISWAP being an international criminal network, of course, has its ideology. It also has its aims and objectives. Whilst not, it's not my intention to focus on what their ideology or what their intentions are, it is necessary for us to understand that within the territorial space that Nigeria, we have measures that have been put in place, and of course that we're also reviewing to ensure that the menace of ISWAP and other terrorist elements do not escalate beyond what it is, rather to have it, taken out completely. And this is the reason why continuously we indeed advocate or counsel Nigerians to understand that terrorism does not have color, does not have race, and has no respect for religion. And the fuel for terrorism is hatred. And that is why we seek the understanding of Nigerians to support the defense and security agencies in ensuring that right information is passed at the right time, in order for us to ensure that those elements who want to disturb our peace, who want to disrupt our peace, who do not want us to get to what our national aspirations, what they are, achieving them, have them taken out amongst us. So for me, on this Democracy Day, my appeal to Nigerians, and of course to you members of the First Estate of the Realm, is to focus on the things that matter. That is, what is it that unites us? What is it that we need to know in order to make peace? What is it that we need to know on our part as members of the Defense and Security Forces in order to be able to dot the I's and cross the T's with respect to operational plans, such that every Nigerian will indeed live in a state of peace. So this, of course, will be my appeal, and I think that it's necessary for us to focus on that rather than looking at the expansion of ISWAP amongst several other issues, which, in my view, will not bring hope to Nigerians, which, of course, in the theme of this democracy message is bringing hope to Nigerians.
In general, you've talked about, the people, you've talked about how perhaps intelligence needs to now go back to the grassroots, but how much do the people trust, the military? Do they trust the government? I mean, this was a problem. Solving COVID, for example, the government had a trust in the people to give out all of those protocols, but how much trust is there for that information? And this is also to forestall any violence or incident.
Well, Milton, thank you for that question. Let me say that trust is a commodity that does not belong to the military nor the civilians. Rather, it is that which belongs to all of us as Nigerians. So it is not about how much the civilian or the populace trust the military. No. It is for us to have an understanding that we can't withhold information and expect that miracle will happen. Certainly, it's not going to happen. I'm a victim as well as every other Nigerian that is on the street. We're all victims together. There is no one who is on the other side of the steel wall. No, we're in it together. Our family members are in it. We as men and women at the front lines, we're in it. We take the first hit. So the issue is this: trust is not something that we need to beg for, but it is for us to bring the understanding why there has to be trust. Indeed, our citizenship is anchored on the need for us to trust each other. That's the reason we have the national anthem and, of course, the pledge. So for me, I will seek and, of course, crave the indulgence of all Nigerians to say that, look, there has to be trust. Trust must exist, and trust must be given in all respects, so that together we will achieve the state of peace that we so desire.
General, there are a lot of things that you've said there about trust building and all of that between the population and the military, and the fact that the military is in fact part of the population. In the report we played before we came to you, there was a picture of the lady who is a family member of one of those who is in custody, shall we say, of the kidnappers from the Kaduna train incident. There are other families who have lost loved ones in a war, and those who have lost loved ones in the southeast and the northeast, military men, retired officers, and so on, who are all feeling the pain of this insecurity challenges. We know that you have to get to the church service, which is part of today's Democracy Day. So one will ask you, what will you say to those people to assuage their feelings that, look, this is a big hole that we seem to find it difficult to climb out of, because it appears that even though you say that for everyone that eventually happens, so many are foiled, the one that happens is the one that people focus on, because that is where their pain comes from. What will you say to those people to assuage those pains and to give them hope that this is not going to be continuous?
Well, thank you very much, Ladi, for that question. First and foremost, let me equally thank you and the Chinese television generally over the reportage concerning the 11 released victims that happened yesterday. Now, I'm sure as the days go by, you understand that Nigerians that are concerned were part of those who were responsible for the safe return of those victims. And I think the chiefest of them all, of course, is Mr. President, Commander-in-Chief, who, of course, has given us a marching order that everyone who is behind, enemy lines, if you like, who are in the dens of their captors, must be released, hale and hearty. That, of course, was the caveat that he added to us in the mandate. And so it means that if there is any rescue operation that is to be conducted, anyone that leads to the death of the captives, then of course it means that that operation is not a success. So this is the reason why all the avenues of approach to solving this problem is being pursued. And so what I need to perhaps at this stage tell the families of the victims is for them to continue to have hope on the defense and security forces, along with other well-meaning Nigerians who are engaged in ensuring that peace return to our land. All hope is not lost, and I must say, all hope is not lost. Every day, and I'm glad that, and I also need to use this opportunity to congratulate Mr. President for the broadcast that he made this morning. And indeed, he aptly captured that every day he's in grief over the plight of those victims that are in various states of captivity. So this is actually the spirit that drives our action. And we, of course, feel the pain of everyone, especially the family members, and to perhaps use this opportunity to assure them that no stone will be left unturned in ensuring that their loved ones return to them again. And I'm hopeful that this objective that we've set for ourselves will be achieved. So let them keep hope alive, and I also would like to urge Nigerians to continue to keep hope alive, make the necessary contributions, and give information that that never again shall we have a situation where Nigerians will be abducted and will, of course, will be there in perpetuity. That is something that we must end, and I believe that we will achieve it going forward.
Amen to that. Chief of Defense Staff, General Irabor, many thanks for joining us today. And we'd also like to thank members of the armed forces for all they do. Thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Thank you. Thank you, Minister.
Let's take a break, and when we return, we'll delve deeper into the security risk factors and some of the other solutions that are possible. Please stay on with us.
Campaign.
The people of this country went to polls on Saturday, June 12, 1993, and without let or hindrance chose me as their president. Didn't they?
Well, I say that in any modern society, the people have a right and a duty, not just a right, to express the popular will by popular action, provided it's peaceful. And throughout the political history of Nigeria, we've had that under all regimes. There have been marches, demonstrations, all sorts, so long as it's peaceful. It's the people's right. In this case, it's a double right. The people are insisting that the law should be obeyed. What can be better than that?
marking the formal official federal government recognition of June 12 as National Democracy Day. Thank you all, and God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Welcome back. In March 2022, there was a month-to-month increase in security incidents and fatalities, as well as kidnappings. Well, that's according to Beacon Security Report. In the third month of the year, Nigeria recorded 428 incidents that resulted in 702 abductions and 1,497 fatalities, affecting 217 local government areas in 35 states.
A month-to-month analysis of the changes in the figures recorded in February 2022 and March 2022 showed a 40.1% increase in kidnappings and a 68.8% increase in fatalities. A comparison of the incidents that occurred in March 2021 and March 2022 shows a 144% rise in incidents, abductions, and fatalities.
Well, joining us to take a further look at the insecurity situation in the country, here in Lagos, we have Dr. Kabir Adamu, security consultant, Beacon Securities Limited. Dr. Kabir, thank you for joining us. We also have from our Abuja studios, retired Commissioner of Police, Emmanuel Ojukwu.
Thank you very much, CP Ojukwu. Thank you so much for joining us. Virtually, I'm also being told that we have Major General Augustine Agundo, Special Advisor to the Governor of Plateau State and former theater commander of Operation Safe Haven, joining us virtually. General, thank you for your time. Welcome to the program. Well, while we're waiting for the General, I think we're going to start with our two guests in studio. Dr. Adamu, there are a lot of statistics here. And you listened to what the CDS said a bit earlier, that for every one that is reported that we, the media, supposedly feast on and so on, there are dozens that have been foiled. Is that a fair comment on his part? And are those who are focusing on the failures as opposed to the successes being unfair to the military and the security agencies generally?
Ladi, do I have immunity here?
You do.
You're asking me to analyze the statement of a general.
Indeed. Well, there are two other generals joining us on the panel, so your immunity will need to stretch.
Well, on a serious note, I'm aware of the incident the CDS mentioned, the one that happened in Kano when a vehicle was recovered. The vehicle was loaded with IEDs, and it was traveling from Jigawa to Kano. And given the population of Kano, if that vehicle had been delivered, most likely to a gathering of perhaps a substantial number of persons, the story would have been different today. So yes, to that extent, I think the security forces, the generality of them, are working to prevent certain incidents. But I think the onus is on them to communicate their successes to Nigerians. What Nigerians feel is the number of deaths that happened. In your earlier report, you mentioned that in 2021, about 9,000 people died. This is also documented in my consultancy. 9,000 people, Nigerians, fathers, mothers, brothers, sisters. So rightly, Nigerians are not happy with the security situation. And I think while the military is preventing some of these incidents, it's also the responsibility of the entire security sector to report the successes in a manner that Nigerians would appreciate and understand, so that that 9,000 is dropped to a number that I think would show Nigerians. If we drop it to, let's say, even 1,000, Nigerians will still complain. If we drop it further to 100, Nigerians perhaps would be happier. And so it's a way, it's a means between communicating successes as well as preventing the occurrences that we're seeing. And I agree totally with the CDS that it's a responsibility that must be taken up by both the security sector organizations as well as Nigerians as a whole. Sharing information when you see and hear development, as well as the protection for the sharing of that information, is the responsibility of perhaps both sides.
Indeed, Billy said before you jump in, I think Major General Henry Ayola, former Chief of Defense Research and Development, has joined us in our Abuja studios. General, thank you for your time. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Ladi. Thank you for having me. Good day, viewers.
Thank you. And my question is to Mr. Ojukwu, retired Commissioner of Police. And this is, if you're surprised by the scale of attacks that we've seen in the last 1 year.
Well, every right-thinking Nigerian will be not just surprised, be concerned and be alarmed at the rising increase in crimes, not just attacks, other violent crimes. Because these things are having a lot of impact on economic development, having a lot of impact on population, social life, and a good number of other things. So every Nigerian says a no-no to violent crimes. I do know that the police and other security agencies are doing quite a lot to stem the tide in criminality and in violent crimes. A lot of results have been achieved. A lot of activities have been prevented from happening, but a good number still do happen, and the Nigerians are alarmed. Rightly so, because everybody wants to protect life and property, and so anything that happens that is detrimental to social development, economic growth, and normal flow in life, in property, is of concern to everybody, to me and to every well-meaning Nigerian. But I do know a lot is being done to keep them in check.
If I may, Major General Ayola, we've seen a number of improvised explosive devices used. I think we saw that in Taraba, and this is apart from what we witnessed in Ondo State. What do you make of this dimension of violence?
Yeah, thank you very much for that question. I had an occasion to talk about this a few days ago. If we recall vividly that between 2009 to about 2014, this pattern was very common. I mean, that was at the beginning, following the death of Mohammed Yusuf, when Boko Haram went all out violent. This was their initial modus operandi, at that time, bombing, using vehicles to do counter-strike effect bombing, human-borne IEDs and all of that. That was how they started before they graduated into actually engaging the military forces and then eventually settling in the Sambisa forest and all of that. So it's like going back to that modus operandi. So it's actually not strange when we look at it from that perspective. But then it then tells you that we could see it as a resurgence of an old tactics, And so perhaps what we did then to curb that before they changed tactics, we have to revisit that and see how to also deal with it decisively this time around.
That this is Boko Haram return, or Boko Haram now in as ISWAP?
Oh, okay. Well, when we say ISWAP, I think we need to also remember ISWAP started as a faction of Boko Haram. It was actually a breakaway faction of the mainstream Al-Banawi sect that was actually initially led by the son of Mohammed Yusuf, Abu Musab. So it was a breakaway from the Shekau's faction. So there's really not much difference between ISWAP and Boko Haram. The major difference is the name, and because when they broke away, then they swear allegiance to ISIS, And that's why they became, Islamic State, West African province. So there is really much, perhaps the difference between them is a little ideological difference as to how violent they are to population, places, and when they do their operation, they have more consideration about population-centric operations, whereas the Shekau faction were not that considerate. And then they were known also to be very more friendly with the locals when they capture a place. Those are the few differences between them. Other than that, in terms of ideology, modus operandi, they are virtually the same.
Dr. Adamu, in trying to talk about this, I've listened to quite a number of people talk, and they say that these attacks are not necessarily random as we look at them like laymen. Someone I listened to on one of the programs said virtually everywhere you have the attacks, whether it's in the north or in the southern part of the country, there's a certain attachment to some sort of resource. Create some chaos there while the authorities are concerned about that chaos. Those people can get on with the business of illegal mining or extracting of those resources. In the case of Owo and Ondo, someone mentioned the idea of bitumen. In Zamfara, we had heard the whole idea about gold and all of that. And that in the northeast, when it became likely that we would get oil, that also sparked some. If this is true, how come we are not reacting to that? We are not being proactive if we know? First of all, is it true? And if so, why are we not reacting?
So let me avoid falling into the fray of the narrative. There is a conspiracy theory that is going around, and unfortunately that conspiracy theory has gained a lot of traction. So let me not fall into that trap of responding and then falling into it. Okay. Into it. What I would say is this: the answer to solve whatever it is in intelligence. And I'm happy with the question you earlier asked the CDS. We need to enhance the capability of our intelligence agencies. And to do that, we need to ensure that there is some level of accountability within the entire security architecture. Now, we have organizations that are whose mandate is purely for intelligence, and there are about 4 of them. Then for every of the security organizations, about, if you add the 4, about 23 more, each of them have an intelligence arm. Now, unfortunately, because of our history and some other internal structural issues that they have, they're not working together as one. So you have them operating in silos. You have sometimes unhealthy competition between them. Now, there are 2 things that are key to intelligence. That is to detect and then to understand. If you are able to detect and understand, then you can prevent. But in our own case, I see over time, and I've studied security, I've worked security in Nigeria for about 30 years, that this is the crux of the matter. We, for some certain reasons, fail to detect, and even when we detect, we fail to understand. And because you don't understand, it will be difficult for you to prevent. The earlier question you asked the general, ISWAP, for a couple of months now, based on the intelligence that I work in commercial intelligence, and this is not state intelligence, but it gives me the ability to see and understand these trends. So we knew, for instance, that ISWAP was expanding its territory from its traditional base in the Lake Chad area, Borno, Yobe, into other parts of Nigeria. And the one that worried me was Kogi State. From around February, we saw a couple of bombing incidents in Kogi State. So what did I do? I put a simple protractor in Kaba and drew a cycle around Kaba. And every area that fell into that was vulnerable to attack. Now, if I was in public security, what I would do is to reach out to every unit within those states that were within that cycle and tell them, look, you're likely to be attacked. And this is what you should do to prevent the attack. And what are the targets? And that this is where I differ a little bit from General, I think, Ayola. We can play roles in preventing these attacks. There is counter-terrorism, which is the role of government. Then there is anti-terrorism, which is the role of you and I. Now, churches, as an example, mosques in those locations, they are soft targets. How do we enhance the physical security measures within those churches and then within the mosque and other vulnerable locations? So those are the kind of intelligence-driven reactions that I'm hoping to see. That even now, despite the fact that we're aware that there is an increased level of threat, in certain locations, I'm not seeing those necessary changes that would ensure there is a preventative, measures, especially along soft targets. So the answer to your question really is intelligence.
Now, General Ayola, the military is at the forefront of this. There are those who have argued that the military should not be at the forefront of this, that it was a mistake of strategy to put the military at the forefront of it, that actually, because most of this involves civilians, whether they be bandits or you call them terrorists or whatever, they are civilians, and that the police and the intelligence agencies that Dr. Adamu just highlighted would have been better, because the military's primary mandate is to defend territorial integrity, and that now they are spread over virtually all the states of the Federation. The territorial integrity suffers as a result. Is that again a fair comment on the situation? And do you agree, as a former military officer or as a retired military officer, that it was wrong to put them in front in the first place?
Okay, thank you very much. I think this is a very critical question. It offers me the opportunity to clear this once and for all. I hear people say this a lot of times about either the military has a duty relating to internal security or not. I think there is a need to go back to the Constitution. The third function of the military mentioned in the Constitution is suppressing insurrection and acting in aid of civil authority, as they may be called out to do so by the president. So constitutionally, and even by training, the military is also trained to participate in internal security. Now, but this is how it works. Usually, when any crisis starts as just some form of criminality, yeah, even the police operate the same way. You deploy the conventional police. If the situation gets bad and escalates, then it gets to the time you deploy the mobile police. That's how it's done. Usually, force is applied incrementally. Once a situation has degenerated or escalated to the point that is beyond the normal police duty, that's when the military is called out. And we've long passed that point, long past that point. That was how it was. In fact, on the plateau where I was commander of Operation Safe Haven, of course, it was all police operation initially. But when it escalated beyond what the police could handle, of course, that's what happened. Then the military is called out. So it's the normal, and even the military also operates that incremental way. You deploy your conventional forces. When it gets worse, then you start thinking of your special forces, and people who are trained to deal with specific kind of operation. That's the way it is. So it's not an anomaly in any sense. We have gone through that phase, and before it became clear, and the commander-in-chief will then call out the police. So it's not an error in any sense. Usually, that's why it starts that way and graduates that way. So that's what I would say about that.
Perhaps we'll also ask about integration of the security agencies in terms of intelligence. But I'd like to ask you, CP Ojukwu, to what extent does the police use intelligence in their activities?
Yeah, thank you very much. Right from inception, the police has always had an intelligence arm or a department that oversees intelligence and gives intelligence, actionable intelligence to the force to operate. It's been ongoing, and a lot of development has been put in place in that regard. But the issue is that the police over the years has not been given the wherewithal to develop its intelligence arm. You are well aware that when the NSO was carved out of the police e-department was kind of sidelined. But over time, the police realized that without intelligence, it will not be able to do its job. And once its job is not done, and there's chaos, there's anarchy, insurrection, as the military officer just mentioned earlier on, the military will come in. And that does not portend very well for the image of the police. So right now, as we speak, the intelligence arm of the police is being upgraded, is being retooled, being re-energized. A lot more officers are being trained in that area. And they've been able to achieve a lot of results in the areas of kidnapping. A lot of kidnappers, well-known kidnappers in this country, have been arrested and brought to book on account of intelligence-led policing
on the part of the police. So efforts have been done to upgrade it, and all those things require a lot of funds. I do believe that even with the recent case of Irabor, where the National Security Council asked the police to look for these perpetrators and bring them to book, that will require deployment of intelligence assets, and where the police are lacking in some areas, they may make some requests and there will be intervention from the government.
And that's what we also heard from the Ondo State governor, who said the local network, Amotekun, wasn't sufficient in terms of equipment, and asking that there should be some sort of state police. Are you a proponent of that?
State police has been in the air for quite some time. If Nigerians so decide to have state police, so be it. But what we have right now is that the Nigerian police, as presently constituted, is operating in about 7,000 locations in this country. Every police formation you have in a state has like 90% of its officers from that community, or from that state, or from contiguous states. They operate. But what the people are asking for in state police is police that will be controlled by the state government and the apparatus. If Nigerians so wish, fine. But the police, as of today, operates and cooperates with local communities, vigilantes like Amotekun you mentioned now, because the police cannot be everywhere at the same time. They may not understand the internal operations of some of these criminals in those locations. They need the involvement of the communities in policing those communities. And that's about community policing and even state police. That's all well and good. But if you want to have a structure called state police, let the constitution be amended, and then Nigerians will have a taste of it, and then they will know which way to go.
I wanted to talk to Dr. Adamu, and this is in terms of, state police. For the Ondo State governor, he says state police could have, perhaps foresaw what will happen. Is that true? Will that be the solution?
So it depends. The philosophy of policing itself requires a level of control by the very people that have established that, policing department. And I think that is the missing element, even with the federal structure that we have at the moment. So if we decentralize and do not enhance democracy at the state level, then we're likely to have the same situation that we're having at the federal level. So my answer to your question is, how do we improve the democratization of our security agencies? And it's instrumental. Today is June 12th. We're speaking about democracy. How do we move the democracy from governance structures into the security organizations? How do we ensure the security organizations are accountable to us as a people? So that for me would be the only way. If we just move the same structure that we have at the federal level to the state level, and the governor has absolute control over the security department, then unfortunately what is happening at the federal level will repeat itself. There are two key elements, I think. First of all, the utilization of the resources at the disposal of whether federal police or state police. Then the second element is the accountability measures that will be put in place for whatever policing arrangement that we have in place. Unless we work on these two, and unfortunately, I do not think the governor's recommendation would work for the state.
Now, let me come back to you, retired CP Ojukwu, and then General Ayola, I want you to weigh in on this same question, because when we have these discussions about security and we get to talking about what's the way forward, the solutions to this, we always talk about intelligence, knowing what's going to happen before it happens so that if it's a bad thing, we can prevent it from happening. One thing that seems to become apparent is that when you look at it from other countries' examples, there are two groups of people who are very good with intelligence, whether they are in rural areas or they are in urban areas, and that is the youth, the young, because they move around a lot, and then fairly old people, people in the older generation who have not too much on their hands and therefore have a lot of time to observe what is going on, and because they've been around for a long time, they know when something has gone wrong. In Nigeria, those two groups, particularly the young ones, don't trust the security agencies, particularly the police. The trust deficit between the young and the police is as wide as the Atlantic Ocean. As a matter of fact, they don't want to have anything to do with the police. And more often than not, the interaction between the police and the young people is one of, as we saw with NSAS, brutality. That's the accusation. So if the young ones and the older ones who are doing the intelligence gathering without knowing it don't talk to those who are supposed to act on intelligence, what are we supposed to do?
Okay, thank you for that. If you look at the police as it is considered today, the top echelon of the police are like 20 to 30,000, while over 250,000 are junior officers. And these junior officers are part of the youth you're talking about. They also grew up from those same communities where you have the youth who are so-called civilians. So they interact extensively. They went to the same school, they go to the same churches, the same mosques, so they have a lot of interaction between them. This is that the youth of today are on a fast lane. They want to get there quick, want to ride good cars, have good technology at their beck and call. And some want to have quick money. By so doing, they get in conflict with the law. And the same youth on the part of the police are the ones to enforce the law. So issue of conflict must arise in trying to enforce the law. What we saw during the NSAS was that the police was just a metaphor. They were after the government, actually. People were fed up with so many issues in Nigeria, and because they see the police every day in every area of their operations, the police were the first victims, and the police became the whipping boy. There is issue of trust gap, which you alluded to, not just with the police, but with the elders and with the government of the day. The trust gap has always been there. And to bridge it means that we need to listen to people as they ventilate their grievances and act on them. June 12th, as we are marking today, somebody won an election and somebody annulled it. First time Nigerians went to cast their votes and they expressed their wishes. Somebody stood on their wishes. What we are saying is that if we are going to reap from June 12th as Democracy Day, we need to begin to allow people to express their choices, their rights, and listen to them instead of using a jackboot to trample on them and they may arise again. So the police and the youth, they do quite a lot of interaction. And because that about 60% of Nigerian population are the youth, the police needs to tap into these youth as avenues of information that could translate to intelligence. And I do believe it's working as the days go by.
General Ayola, your take on this?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think it's an area really I'm itching to speak on. Let me start from, I have two areas I want to talk here. First, about the increase in criminality and much more among the youth. I think there's an area we're overlooking, the area of parenting and the failure in that area. Because, you know, the law of harvest is that when you sow a seed, you reap multiple seeds. Multiple seeds. So what has happened is that the nation has gone through a cycle where you have had parents who perhaps were not well raised, now have become parents, and they are raising and having little or nothing to pass on to the generation of their children. And we are seeing that playing out. You know, it's so easy to deposit all of this responsibility at the feet of the security services. But I think we need to start from the homes, where parents should play their role, raise their children properly, the way they should be raised. Let there be values and ethics and character cultivation, so that the amount of delinquency in the society will be reduced. That's one area. The second area is the issue of the intelligence community. I mean, without trying to be an advocate for the intelligence community, but I see another gap there. From my own experience, I worked with some fantastic guys in the Department of State Services and, you know, the intelligence, you know, sector of arms of the police, of civil defense and all of that. And I see a lot of capacity in this community. But you see, one thing we also forget in that area, that no matter how good your intelligence community is, or your intelligence services and security services are, they are not the consumers of their products. The intelligence products are passed on to other first responders or other services and security services who have to implement, who have to take advantage of the intelligence to carry out operations. Now, when there is a gap in that connectivity, or in that connection in particular, it shows. So that even if you get the best of intelligence, let's take, for example, the police intelligence gets some useful intelligence and passes it on, and the nearest responder is a police station, and they don't have a vehicle to respond. You will be blaming the intelligence community, but they've done their job, and their job ends as dissemination. Okay? Now, if logistics are not there for the first responders to carry out their own part of the job, then the fault still goes back. But it has to be shared. So we need to look at the nodes and the joints within the security architecture itself and make sure we plug those gaps. It's only then that the work of the intelligence can then have an effect at the end of the day. And then we'll be much more appreciated. That's my take on that. Thank you. We're ended this segment in just 90 seconds. So I guess that 90 seconds, Vincent, gives us enough time to thank our guests. There's still so much to unpack, but we want to thank all of you for participating in this segment. But not everybody is leaving, right?
No, not everyone. Mr. Ojukwu, give us perhaps tell us in terms of security, in terms of democracy, consolidating democracy in terms of security now. Where do you see us going? What are some of the things that you want to see, you want the police to do? Your parting words as you leave us now.
Yes, I want to see the police be more teachable, more amenable to learn the rudiments of enforcing law and order in line with the dictates of human rights. The police job essentially is to promote and to protect human rights of Nigerians. So the police is the chief protector of this democracy that we are marking today. I expect to see the police more amenable to such teachings and to toe the line so that they begin to practice democratic policing to be in line with international best practices. And that is, I can see that coming quite soon.
I'm going to say the police is your friend, but I'll say it. Police is indeed our friend. Thank you so much, CP Emmanuel Ojukwu, for joining us today.
Indeed, by that, General Ayola and Dr. Adamu will be staying with us for the next segment, but we will be back after this break.
See, a leader does what he believes is the best thing to do in a given circumstance. But a leader, when he has superior facts, can change his mind. That won't amount to apology. Well, we're not asking him to apologize. We're just asking that in the light of the popular mandate of the Nigerian people, as a Nigerian too, and as a leader of Nigeria, you should think again. That's all.
Today, June the 12th, marks another Democracy Day anniversary and an occasion to celebrate freedom and unity of our nation. From 1999, we consistently celebrated Democracy Day to mark the end of military rule and the return of power and control into the hands of those freely elected by the people. On this day, Nigerians recommit themselves to ensuring we protect and preserve the ideals of democracy. In 2018, we moved Democracy Day from 29th of May to the 12th of June. This change was to remind all Nigerians of one free election after which the presumed winner, along with Nigerians, were denied their rights and their choice. On June 12, 1993, Nigerians saw the best in our citizens as we all went out to vote peacefully. By June 24, 1993, we also saw the worst of our leadership as the elections were annulled. We must never forget the sacrifices of the heroes of Nigeria's democracy during 1993. Their patriotism and peaceful struggle should guide our actions, especially when it comes to electing our leaders and holding them accountable now and in future. In honor and memory of one of our national heroes for democracy, Chief MKO Abiola, GCFR, we must all work together to ensure this transition is done in a peaceful manner. I am hopeful that we can achieve this.
Welcome back. You're still watching Channels Television's special program on Democracy Day, Giving Hope to Nigeria. Remember that you can join us online, follow the conversation on social media at our handles at Channels TV on Twitter, at Channels Television on Instagram, and it's streaming live on our YouTube channel. And you can also watch us if you're in the United Kingdom, Sky 518. And yes, we also have and have had for the past an hour or so members of the audience here in our Lagos studio. And they will be, of course, asking some questions, of course, during the end. And we'd like to, inform you that, you can put down your questions. Some of you would like to, of course, ask them, via audio. We would also be taking them, and this is towards the end. And you can indeed join that conversation online as well.
Absolutely. So in this segment now, we're going to go slightly deeper, and that's why we've retained Dr. Kabir Adamu, Managing Director of Beacon Securities, who's here in Lagos, Major General Henry Ayola, former Chief of the Defense Research and Development in our Abuja studios, and we expect that we're being joined, of course, by Ms. Indi Kato, and we're also expecting to be joined by Professor Ahmed Balogun.
Yeah, there's Indi Kato.
Yes, there's Indi Kato. Hi,
Foundation.
Indi. Welcome to the program. Indi's in our Abuja studios as well.
Me.
All right. Thank you for your time. Welcome. Professor Ahmed Balogun is in the Federal University of Technology, Akure, and he joins, we expect him to be joining us virtually. He's a food expert. He's a food security expert, and that is one of the things that we will also be focusing on, and how that has been affected by insecurity. In fact, about 19.4 million people will face food security insecurity across Nigeria between June and August this year. A report by the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, processed in collaboration with Nigeria's Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development and other stakeholders, analyzed acute food and nutritional insecurity in the Sahel and West African region.
The report said the food crisis will affect Nigerians in 21 states and the FCT, including 416,000 internally displaced persons. As at May 2022, it noted that about 14.4 million people, including 385,000 IDPs in 21 states and the FCT, are already in the food crisis. The analysis for the month of March covered several states: Abia, Adamawa, Edo, Gombe, Katsina, Lagos, Sokoto, Taraba, Yobe, and Zamfara. And of course, we mentioned the FCT. Well, I mean, let's just really delve into this. Essentially, what we're witnessing in terms of, security and how it's affecting other parts of the sector, the economy, agriculture. Indy, I'd like you to come in here since you've just joined us from Abuja studios. Essentially, your thoughts. We are celebrating Democracy Day today, but we're really focusing on insecurity. Is there much hope for Nigerians when they think of the aspect, our security?
So, I'm speaking as a Nigerian who is clearly affected by this. I hate to be the one to break the news or to be the, having of bad news, but no, there isn't right now. We do want to hope for better, but every day it's like you come on any platform at all, and what you're met with is a barrage of bad news, of different things happening to people in this nation, and you're just wondering when is your turn. I saw conversations about the Owo massacre, and on the same day, things happened in southern Kaduna, where I come from, and these things are happening almost every day, one news after the other. It has become so much that we can't even keep track anymore, and it is disheartening. But at the same time, we need to move beyond. Okay, we're mourning, yes, we are, but every day, we've come to the point where it has become our normal. Yes, it has become our normal, but something needs to happen. We can't continue like this. I can't even at this point project it to, a new person in power is going to change this. It has become our normal. This is what the average Nigerian wakes up to. This segment is about food security. This segment really tells us, look, in a matter of time, Nigerians will be starving. We're starving already. I come from a very, very wealthy place when it comes to food. But if you go to the village, people barely have food to eat. If there's one thing we always have in store, it will be grains. If there's one thing it's tubers of anything to make sure that food is there. It's not there anymore. The result of insecurity is glaring at us in the face. We can't continue to act like, this is not happening, or this is happening just in small bits and pieces. This is our normal, and it has consumed the whole nation.
Stay with you, India, and ask, as you said, southern Kaduna, like many other parts of the north, and indeed many other parts of the country, are areas that are supposed to produce food in significant quantities, not just for the immediate environment, but for movement to other areas where they produce other things and then collect those other things and bring there. But this insecurity that you've talked about prevents farmers from getting to their farms. And if they can't get to their farms, they can't plant, they can't harvest. So there isn't anything to eat. So that's what you've talked about now. But I want to go beyond that and find out what really, if we take the southern Kaduna example, beyond the headlines of so number of people attacked, so number of villages, and so on, what really is the problem in that area? What have you identified or have you zeroed in to be the cause of this insecurity and what we can do about it?
So it's prevalent attacks against the farmers in this area, against indigenes of these places. And at the end of the day, I think one of the first things we had to deal with was insincerity on the part of those whose job it is to tackle this. We have gone through this battle back and forth with the government on what was supposed to be done. And we had talks of, the first time we had talks of exchanging money with these killers. The government, our governor spoke about something, I think on the station he did that. And we've really gone down the rabbit hole since then. They have collected more and more. This is running into billions. It is suicidal. That's the best way to paint it. To go to the farm in some of these places right now is absolutely suicidal. These attacks keep happening. It can be lone attacks. We hear you may hear of the one that 50-something people, 30-something people died, like the recent one, where they said, the helicopter was there, but then it was said the helicopter came to help. But there are every day, if a person goes to the farm, one person goes to the farm, the person is dead. Two people go to the farm, they are dead. Three people go, they are dead. It's happening over and over again. And then in these poor communities, incessant kidnappings are happening. These people still have to take from what they do not have and give to these attackers. And then this further emboldens the attackers. We're seeing different narratives happening. And in certain places, in the same Kaduna, we would want to be told that, oh, in certain places it's clashes, but in other places it's attacks by terrorists. In other places it's ISWAP. We don't even know, what the narrative, the general narrative is. It's the same space. How are we saying, oh, this here, this is this here, that is that there? It's the same space. It's the same modus operandi we are seeing. The same kidnappings happening, the same attacks on communities happening, the same thing. So right now we're just looking at, for me, I'm looking at, look, people from these areas, I as a Southern Kaduna person, speaking for people from all of these places, need, number one, a certain level of truth from the government. Number two, a commitment to ending these things. It's one thing to come on the media and say, I'm committed to ending this. And then it's another thing for people to see sincerity of purpose, because in lots of the time, people in these communities talk about calling out for help, and then there is nothing being done. Even the governor at some point, when the train attack happened, opened his mouth and said, look, sometimes they point to where these attackers are and nothing has been done. All of these things reduces faith. People need to hope for something. People need to feel like, look, we're being heard, somebody cares. And all of these things reducing that. And it's not in one place you're hearing it, severally. Over the years, even when I was in university in Unijos, people will say, look, we called for help. Security personnel were right there. Oh, while they kidnapped us, we were passing, there were soldiers there. This one and that one. Like, these narratives are always there. And then people talk of seeing, oh, what they say are, oh, sometimes people say, look, oh, it seems that there are soldiers here aiding and abetting. Sometimes you see news of people who have abandoned their post to join. None of this helps at this point. People need a sense of hope. People also need to be included in the security of their place. We've talked about state and community policing for so long now. But even for some of our areas, if we're not even going to get that, can we at least get the dignity of civilian joint task force? Many of in the Northeast, they have that. But we don't know why in Kaduna, for example, we're not getting that. People want to be able to protect their homes. They can point, they can show you. Some of them have learned to even fight. Allow people. I think we need to get people from this grassroots. We need to ensure that, look, the people who are most affected by this are involved in the protection of their own homeland. We need our security personnel, the army, the police, we need them to be more in tune with these communities. You don't come to these communities and you are aloof. You don't come to these communities and you act like, look, we are people who have come from somewhere and you are just bloody civilians. I think that if you come to these communities and make people feel a sense of safety around you, feel like, look, you are for them, people would open up more. It will help policing. It will help maintain security in these places. But as it is right now, we're not really getting much of that. And I honestly, with the trajectory, with what we have seen so far, I'm not seeing things getting better anytime soon. It's time to explore new options.
I guess it's not a one-size-fits-all in terms of, the solution. But before we come to you, and this is Major General Ayola, because I'd like you to respond to some of the things that Ndikato had to say. We'd like to welcome Professor Ahmed Balogun, who's an expert, climate change, head laboratory for geoecology, sustainable food systems, FUTA, that's the Federal University of Technology, Akure. Professor, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, and happy Democracy Day to Nigerians.
Thank you very much. So, Major General Ayola, over to you.
Yes, thank you so very much. I recall that Southern Kaduna situation is similar to a lot part of the plateau. And so when I was commanding Operation Safe Haven, one method that we used to create an enabling environment on the farms was to get our troops deployed around the farms, agree on a time for which farmers can go to their farms and the time they must depart. So we create the presence of the security forces. So while the farmer is working, the header is handling his cattle, and nobody does anything stupid around that time. So I think that period is known and it's announced to the community. They know that don't go to farm outside these hours. And that worked very well. Even though it's not the best of solution, but at least it's a workable solution. But what it also means is further tasking of the already overstretched armed forces and police and all of that. But it's a solution that worked. So that's one thing I can add. Of course, obviously, if farmers are driven off their farms, if people cannot go to farm because of fear of being killed, it's certainly the inevitable, unintended consequences of that will be scarcity of food, and that's what we are getting. But I think we can try this method, and it will save the day for now.
Professor Balogun, let's come to you. The Food and Agriculture Organization report suggests that insecurity, especially insurgency in the northeast states of Borno, Adamawa, and Yobe, armed banditry in some northwest states, Sokoto, Katsina, Zamfara, and Kaduna, as well as the north-central states of Benue and Niger, are key drivers for the food crisis. As someone who has studied this closely, how do you suggest we go about solving this? We know what has caused it, but how do we solve it?
Well, our main problem is our lack of resilience and proactiveness. What we are seeing now is a case of policy backfiring by our inability to empower the citizenry over a long period of time. And that has degenerated into the crisis we are seeing. The bottom line now, as you have said, the issue is not about causes anymore. What do? We need to address the fundamental, which is that we have only been empowering institutions. We are not empowering the citizenry. If, like has been mentioned earlier, the people that are being protected or need protection or are part of the security architecture, the case will have been different. That's one. Secondly, the people in this region, majority of them lack social security, and the same for the bulk of Nigerians. And if there is no social security, I mean, education, health, everybody's poor, there's no way you can defend yourself against poverty. My take now is that going forward, we should change business as usual and focus more on empowering rural communities. As time permits, I will dwell more on how that will be achieved. But what that really means is that to end poverty, our rural communities must be empowered to protect themselves and to produce food and feed themselves. I'll leave it at that for now.
I mean, there is one thing, the will, I mean, one wants to, this is what should be done, but the second thing really is the will to do it. How do we get that done for the people, for students who have been on strike for many months, for those who need to be empowered, the rising, skyrocketing costs of food, and it's not even the Russia-Ukraine war alone or the drought which we're seeing in the Horn of Africa. Do you think politics, we can disabuse politics governance from what we're seeing when it comes to insecurity? Dr. Kabir?
Definitely not. In fact, the politics or governance or the lack of it is a trigger and a driver of the insecurity. And so that brings me, I think, to the period that we're in. We're in a pre-election year, and the language out there is everybody should go get his voter's card. In today's broadcast, the president emphasized his role in strengthening the electoral process, and he gave us a promise that everybody's vote is going to count. So I would, unlike I think Indy, I have hope. If the electoral process has been enhanced, and I know it's been enhanced, there are measures that have been introduced within the electoral process to reduce rigging. So that means if you go out to vote, that person that you voted for is likely to, that vote is likely to count. So all I can say at this stage, given the relationship between governance and politics, or lack of it, and insecurity, is everybody should go get his voter's card and identify that person that promises you he or she is going to walk towards your aspirations. We all have different aspirations. I don't want to campaign for any individual or political party, but as long as the person's promises, you can align with that, it resonates with you, go and get your voter's card and go and vote. The measures that have been introduced within the electoral process will make that vote count. So I've got hope.
Are you convinced that, you know, come 2023, things will be looking up?
I don't think we can get lower than this, hopefully. I don't think we can get lower than this. But one thing I've noticed now, and one thing I have a major problem with, is it seems governance has really stopped in favor of the preparation for 2023, and that's a serious problem. So hopefully after that, things will look up. INEC has done a lot. I think we've talked a lot about the electoral process. And yes, Mr. Kabir, I actually have hope with respect to that. These things are very specific. INEC has done a lot to improve their process. And so this election is a test. I mean, there's also the Osun election, but this election is also a test to see how far these things have, you know, this preparation has come. We're hoping that, look, this time around our votes count. Every election so far, I've seen some certain level of improvement. INEC has done a lot. They've done workshops. They have done a lot of collaborations, even with civil society, to show, look, they're ready for this. At the end of the day, we are going to see a certain level of unpreparedness, you know, voting materials, all of that. But I think that we're going to have a much better election than the last one. With respect to who is going to enter, it's very important that we take these elections very seriously, really, really important. Elections has led us to where we are right now. These things, the politics of things, determine whether you sleep at night, how you eat, all of these things, all the policies, everything that affects us, these things determine them, and we need to take them seriously. So I'm not going to throw a damper or, you know, a damp or wet cloth on the elections, because for a lot of us, this is the hope that we have, that things are going to change. So this is where my hope is right now, that from 2023, at least we will see some improvement. We really can't go lower than where we are right now.
I come to you, Professor Balogun, because if people are hungry, they will not vote, regardless of how many summons INEC or indeed any of the other agencies give. And all the indications are that if we don't do something quickly, and so I'm going to drill down on the first question I asked you, which you said if you had a bit more time, you would be able to address a bit more in detail. It's important that we address that question in detail, because even before now, Nigeria had some gaps in its food sufficiency ratios, and so the insecurity, coupled with what my colleague Millicent has just mentioned, the war in Ukraine, which means that we are largely cut off from wheat, oil, and a couple of other essentials, means that the situation is even worse than it would otherwise have been. The key question at this point is that while all of us go get our PVCs and prepare to vote for whoever we want to, we are hoping that it will not be on an empty stomach, because then we would not probably be making the choices we would otherwise have made. How do we do it in such a way that we avert what so many have called this looming crisis?
Forward, we need to separate politics from governance. It has been the norm in the past 30 years, and that's the problem. We have 740-something local governments in Nigeria. What is each of these local governments known for? And what are the states in which local governments exist doing to enhance the productivity of the people producing these items? This is the solution. We need to truly, holistically, honestly decide to identify our, what we call contemporary advantages, and close in on that and empower the people that are doing it. I'm not going to mention names. There are states where you have federal government silos Those silos have been empty for God knows when. When in actual fact, what the governments of those states should have done is to task and empower the people to produce the grains that goes into those silos. And the list goes on. If we have youths that are not engaged, they are going to be tools for people that are going to use them for evil, and that is what we are seeing. So my take on this is that if we look at the number of people in a particular local government doing what, do we have that data? I want to say that our political elites have apathy for knowledge. A lot has been said about intelligence gathering. It's all about data. It's all about knowledge. Do we have this information at the world, at the local government level? How many people are there? What are they engaged in? How and what are the plans to empower these people to do more? We're not doing that. Talk less of protecting themselves. They are not empowered to produce food to feed themselves. Now, they are also not empowered to protect themselves. So we need to go back to the basics. Apart from that, we have a system that, tie your hands. Our constitution needs to be seriously looked at to empower creativity and innovation. Right now, that is not happening because there are certain things you just cannot touch, even if you can. So these are the serious issues we need to address as a people. Thank you.
Indeed. So, Dr. Adamu, let me now come to you. I stayed with Professor Balogun because this is an area that he has studied, particularly the food aspect. But now coming to the security side of it, which he also mentioned, which is that if the farmers can get to the farms, it doesn't matter what you do, what we're having is what we will have. And I asked Indy earlier on to use the Southern Kaduna example to say, what really is the problem? Most of the time, the media just highlights the fact that X number of people were killed in an attack on Y number of villages. But what caused the problem usually is buried in paragraph 9 or 10, and most people don't read up to that point. What really have we discovered to be the problem, and how best can we tackle that in the shortest time possible so that we avert this crisis?
Okay, the first part of your question, what really is the problem? A couple of things have been identified as the drivers of insecurity in Nigeria. Number one is grievances, unaddressed grievances. Some of them are political, social, or economic. The wide disparity between the have and the have-nots. A lot of persons are angry because of these 3 points. Angry politically, angry socially, or economically. If I use the example of Benue State, between the Idomas and the Tis, it's playing out right now. If you go to Kogi, between the Ibras and the Galas, go to Anambra State, go to Enugu State. Recently, one of the leading senators had to pull out of the electoral process because he was disenfranchised, and that's a senator. So that grievance is a huge driver. Number 2 is climate change and the inability of the federal and state governments to respond to the issues that climate change drives. As an example, desertification and how desertification is pushing populations further from the northern part into the southern part, and how that is driving some of the conflicts that we're seeing. Time will not allow me to go deeper into that. Number 3 is the porous borders that we have, issues, conflict that is happening in the Sahel. And by the way, Sahel is now the new kind of war zone of the world. So a lot of conflicts are going on there. There are about 4 countries right now that have been taken over by military juntas.
Yes, in that region.
Exactly. And then the cases in Mali. Now that is also driving into Nigeria because of our porous borders. A lot of the weapons that are being used by these non-state actors are coming in from there. Our judicial system that unfortunately fails to arrest and punish offenders. People commit offenses and they're able to get away with it. Now, a typical example, kidnap for ransom. I'm a young man who decides to, be law-abiding. I'm Fulani, and I inherited 4 cows from my dad. I raised those cows for 20 years, and they've turned into 20 cows. Multiply 20, say, by 500,000. How much would you get? But I go into kidnapping, commit one act of kidnapping, and I raise 100 million. Meanwhile, the other person is spending 20 years before he reaches that stage. At what point would I drop my profession and join the kidnapping profession? So our judicial system that is failing to punish offenders is also a huge contributory element. And then the role of the influence elements within the society. General Ayula mentioned one of them, which is the family, but there are others. The media is an influence. Influencers like Indy, are also element. I know she has a huge followership on social media. Any statement, Shehu Sani, the former senator, a statement he makes can move a lot of youth to a certain direction. And then, of course, our schools. And that is the one that worries me, that keeps me up at night. Currently, the universities are shut down. Our primary schools, the role of the teachers, when, for instance, they allow certain values that we used to uphold as a society, or they are no longer tenable within those schools. So all of that plays, those are the key drivers. In the case of Southern Kaduna, all of these elements are at play. I didn't mention the proliferation of small arms and light weapons. It's also a huge driver, because no matter how angry you are, if you don't have a gun, for instance, to go and commit the act, it's likely that whatever you do will be limited. But the moment you have a gun, then so all of these things play together as the drivers of insecurity in the men. And to the second part of your question, how do we end all of this? We've got a beautiful document, the Revised National Security Strategy 2019. That document moved us from our concept of national security, which was state-centric, to a concept of security that was human, including food security. So all the elements to enhance food security are contained in that document. In summary, what I think we should do, let's go back to that document. It was introduced in 2019. Have we done a review to see the implementation? What are the challenges towards the implementation of that document? I don't think we've done that. So we've got the answer. We just need to enhance our implementation. And to that extent, I would encourage, especially the role of the legislature. They have a responsibility. There are three core functions: legislation, oversight, and then, of course, representation. So in these three functions, they can actually look at this document and find out, why is it that this is a beautiful document? Why are we not implementing it? If we say, for instance, that our national aspiration is to ensure food security, but we are at a situation where in one community, the ability of that community to produce has been limited by about 80%, we should find out why that ability reduced by about 80%.
Thank you, Dr. Kabir. Our audience, they're itching to ask questions, and
yes,
we're very certain.
I actually have quite a number of them here. General Ayola and Indy, we'll come to you in a couple of minutes for your closing comments on this segment. But at this point, I want to call on some members of our audience to ask some questions
Yes, but we'll come back to them. We just need to go on a quick break. Just stay on with us.
It is not always every time that the changeover of government from military to civilian goes as clockwork, as that of Obasanjo to Elijah Shagari. It could be difficult in some instances, but maturity is required to deal with it, experience is required, and patriotism is required on both sides. Yes. That will not be lacking by the grace of God on this occasion too. Certainly not on this side.
Welcome back. It's in our special program here on Democracy Day with the theme Giving Hope to Nigerians. And we're soon going to, of course, get some of the questions from our audience. But Dr. Kabir, I just quickly wanted to ask you about cybersecurity. That's an issue. But how badly is it affecting us?
A lot. We are in a modern world where technology Internet of Things as an example, social media apps and platforms have been created that we have no control over, and we are not ready for them. Now, on the one hand, there are platforms for gathering intelligence, and in my honest opinion, even the government or departments have not realized that those are platforms for gathering intelligence. In the president's speech this morning, he did mention cybersecurity and surveillance. So I think that as we go forward, especially as we move into the 2023 elections, we need to start talking about the role of cybersecurity and the role of surveillance capabilities within the cyberspace towards enhancing our security. And to do that, there are certain major things that we need to avoid. In post-EndSARS, we saw what CBN did. It closed the accounts of certain persons. And then if you look at the digital currency, those that got involved, their accounts were affected. And that's not good for a democracy. We need to ensure that we're proactive and put in place laws that are not only transparent, but that also inform the citizens that if you do X, this is what is going to happen. If you wait and you're proactive, like the Twitter ban, then the kind of negative image that we got around the world would happen. So cybersecurity is here, it's necessary, but we also need to be proactive. And speaking about the revised National Security Strategy 2019, it also spoke about cybersecurity. So hopefully, my recommendation, if we do a review on the implementation of that strategy, perhaps we can also look at cybersecurity.
Sometimes one wonders if the government is just really far from the people, or there needs to be an agency between the government and the people. So
accountability, Millicent. The government needs to be more accountable. If you ask me for one word that would improve our lot at the moment, frankly, I would mention accountability. The government should be accountable, especially if agents.
All right, let's hear from our audience. Ruth Kezo, you have 30 seconds to ask your question. Where is she?
Every Nigerian here. My question is this. The general blamed the issues of the youth on the parenting. And one of the things I know that there is fear and there is hunger in the land. And there's this blaming going on, How do the government help to, take care of the economy, because there's hunger? There's this economic issue that we need to sort out rather than blaming ourselves. Thank you.
General Ayola, please take note. That question is for you. Awolesi Oluwa Mayowa, 30 seconds.
Happy democracy to everyone. My question is, why is it that the military do not communicate their successes to the citizen, and is there any security reasons to that?
Dr. Kabir Adamu, take note of that. That's your question. Aziz Akeushola.
Happy Democracy Day to everyone. My question is, to what extent will sensitization go in increasing the rising crime rate among youths in Nigeria?
Thank you. Indicato, that's for you. We'll take one more. Clara Akpan.
Happy Democracy Day, Nigerians. My question goes to Dr. Adamu. You said you are into commercial security, and you get security information sometimes early enough. But because you are in the commercial security, it doesn't get to the rest of the public, Nigerians. How can Nigerians benefit from what you do? And what advice or what idea can you contribute to the security agencies on how they can improve their strategy to get the security intelligence information early enough and how they can act on it? Thank you.
Thank you. Patrick Esekodi.
Happy democracy to all Nigerians. My question is to Dr. Kabiru. There's a lot of money being said that in the budget, but we find out that at the end of the day, there's little or nothing when it comes to intelligence. We don't have the right intelligence to at least get information and gather what is going on around. Now, my question is this, because in the developed countries, you will find out that a lot of intelligence is done. But I want to know, how can we move forward? That's my question. Thank you.
And finally, I have here, I believe the name here is Dosumu.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much. Happy Democracy Day, Nigeria. My question goes to us. Apart from the intelligence department, as you have mentioned earlier, it's crystal clear that we're in a digital world, and it's very, very shown that we have not been leveraging it. So my question goes to us. What about leveraging technology as a tool to curb the insecurity? Because I'm very, very aware of programs, applications that can be made together in order to solve all these conundrums. But however, I don't know, maybe the police force or the military arms are making use of it. Thank you.
Now, it seems as if quite a number of people want Dr. Adamu to, so we'll come back to you, Dr. Adamu. Let me start with you, General Ayola. The question about the issue with the youth and the gap, the issue of parenting. There's a question around that. What's your response?
Thank you very much. I want to thank the person that raised that question. It's a very critical one. Yeah, it's very simple. We all came into the world dependent on our parents. So the start point for bringing of anyone at all is the home. Now, every part of society has its own share in raising a child. It starts from the home, then the child goes to school, then the teachers and the school community begin to contribute their own portion. And then, of course, it goes to the larger society as the child grows up to become an adult. So I'm only starting by saying, okay, that start point is very critical because that's where the foundation is laid. Foundation for values, ethics, character, it starts from the home. We can't run away from that. That's not to say that I'm putting the whole blame on parenting. No, I'm just taking that fundamental, that foundational aspect of it. You know, because usually, I mean, you talk about catching them young. Whatever anybody gets at the home front, it becomes the reference point from judging when it begins to go out. Peer pressure and other societal influences are usually resolved with reference to that home training. You know, and that's very strong. That's just the point I made. Permit me to just say a word. There was a question, I know you're giving Dr. Adamu, but I think it's more of a military question. Why the military does not advertise its successes? Basically and professionally, an average military officer is not given to advertising successes. That's typically, I mean, based on, you know, inclinations and all of that. But secondly, there's also what we call operational security, OPSEC. Sometimes in advertising a success, you may be giving out some information that will subvert your further and future, you know, operations. So usually, you have to be able to balance it and see if there's any necessity to do so, and if it does not jeopardize your future successes. You know, that's just what I want to say about that.
Very much. That takes that burden off, Dr. Adamu. Your question, which I asked you to note, your response, please.
So first of all, with respect to rising crime and youths, there's poverty in the land. There's a sense of hopelessness. Young people are idle. They're out of school. They do not have jobs. Definitely, these things are going to lead to rising cases of criminality. The other part of it is we do need behavioral change in Nigeria. So yes, there is a need. There's a need for concerted effort towards behavioral change. Nigerians are beginning to, not beginning, it's there, right there in our culture, in our music, on Instagram, on social media. Everything points to an ostentatious culture, a culture that is pushing for look at wealth, look at all the trappings of wealth without any explanation for where this wealth is coming from. I do think that the government, national orientation agencies, civil society organizations, all of us need to do a concerted push towards behavioral change for Nigerians, because at the rate we're going, sometimes it's not even the fact that, oh, there is hunger in the land. At some point, people are looking, just like Dr. Kabir said, somebody with his 20 cows knows how long it's going to take for his 20 cows to bring money. Another person goes and kidnaps and gets 100 million. People start to think that that is the place, that is the way to to go. So we need to start pushing back to honest work in Nigeria. We're seeing in a lot of spaces, the praise, even in our churches, our mosques, everywhere, the praise for unexplained wealth. People are keen into this because, of course, again, the judicial system, there's no sense of justice. Just however you get it, that's what we're seeing now. We are rewarding a system where however you get it, once you have it, you are rewarded. We need to take a step back from that. So I do support his notion. And yes, there needs to be a concerted effort. National Orientation Agency, you are there for that. Civil society organizations, you're there for that. And a lot of us who have some level of influence, this is the time to start talking about these things and pushing from the pulpit, from the mosques for these kinds of things, because at the rate we are going, our entire culture is subsumed with this. It's not looking pretty. I've spoken about this over and over again. The key is behavioral change.
Indeed. Professor Balogun, before I come to Dr. Adamu, who will have the last word on this and in this segment, let me come to you, Professor Balogun, and ask a question that I was surprised that nobody asked within this audience, because it had to do with food. And that is that most people think that agriculture is something that other people do, and that they just go and collect food and eat. So very few people are involved in agriculture. But what can we do to make it possible for more people to find agriculture interesting?
Thank you very much. The climate change global issue has also come with it some positives. And given the changing climate, we're now talking about growing more food with less land and less inputs, what we call climate smart agriculture. And it's something that everybody can engage in. We've talked about a lot, and I was fascinated about the issue of the guy that inherited 4 cows and the one that is kidnapping. Now, back to what I was saying, that guy that has 4 cows, now 20 cows, selling for one for between 250 and 500, what support has he gotten? Now, with climate smart agriculture, he does not have to move his cow from Kano, Katsina, Jigawa, or wherever to any place. There are now creative innovations that allows him to grow the food that the cows will eat year round. The same thing, that is part of growing more food with less land and less inputs. If you have irrigation, you have there's a maximum amount of food that one cow requires. You know the number of cows you have, you know the amount of land you have, you can grow their food on a particular land, and you can harvest and feed them with it without moving them from one place to another. Yes, that's one way to go. With regards to people, when I said all of us can do it, all of us can engage in sustainable agriculture. You don't have to physically be on the field. It opens up a totally new investment. The rural areas with underutilized lands and young people that are drifting to the cities, why don't we go into those places? Like I was saying, our lands are fragmented, no problem. Aggregate those lands, provide the input, machinery, and resources to those communities. Engage young people and pay them well. A ton of maize as we speak is between 220 and 270,000, depending on whether it's white maize, and it takes between 75 days and 90 days, which means that with climate smart agricultural innovations, we can actually produce this 3 times or a year on the same land.
Professor Balogun, we are winding down on the program. We appreciate your time, but you have the final word. Several questions.
And you have 3 or 4 questions.
Yes.
That I will plead that you answer them in at most 2.5 minutes.
Let me summarize. Monies and budgets. We have so much monies and then yet no intelligence. How do we move forward? Technology as a tool to curbing insecurity, and how can Nigeria benefit from what you do?
Awesome. Let me start with the first question that was answered by General Ayola. Yeah. terrorism is about influence. And the best way military can win the hearts and minds of the people is to communicate their successes. So while I agree with General Ayula that there is a need to be circumspect in sharing information, I think in the democratic space it's absolutely necessary that the machinery of government, not just the military, speaks about success so that people can key in and understand the rule. That if I don't feel you're protecting me, frankly, I'm not going to support you. But if I feel you're protecting me, I will. Now, all the other three questions, I can tie them, I can answer them as one. With regards to the lady who asked about what I do and whether I communicate it to government, the amazing thing is my products are free. They are not paid for. If you go to my website, Beacon Consulting, you can see we've got an incident tracker. Your local government, I think you come from the south, you can pinpoint your local government and see our trend, our analysis. Likewise, we produce reports and we share it. And the amazing thing is they do use it, but they don't give me the credit. So I'm hoping that by this medium, they start giving me, or at least giving my organization the credit. I decided not to, the Japa technology, or rather philosophy, I decided not to join it. I'm here in Nigeria with my family. So frankly, my stake is here in Nigeria. The second question regarding technology. Technology is a force multiplier in security. If we use it, it will help us. If we decide to go as we're going right now, and like the professor said, we're afraid to embrace the data, then we'll continue where we are. Big data, companies like Tesla, like Twitter, name them, they embrace big data, and we see where they are. Meta is the way the world is going at the moment. So frankly, we need to also embrace technology into security. And then, of course, the last question, budget and intelligence. What I created in my organization, I know how much I spent. I've seen the budgetary allocations for the different security departments, and I start to be corrected without sounding bogus about my statement. What I am spending is about 1/10 of what these organizations are spending, and without blowing my trumpet, my products are much better than their products. So probity and accountability needs to be extended into the budgetary system as well. All that money I've seen, frankly, is a little bit too much for what the kind of products I've seen being produced by the organization. So I'm hoping that especially the National Assembly and organizations like the EFCC and ICPC would start looking into that direction.
I'd like to thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Kabir Adamu, for joining us here from Abuja Studios in Decatur. Thank you so much. And Major General Henry Ayola, always a pleasure. Thank you. And of course, virtually, Professor Ahmed Balogun, thank you so much for joining us on our June 12 special.
You've been watching the Channels Television June 12 special. Giving hope to Nigerians. I'm Ladia Keridulali. And I'm Millicent Walker. You can, of course, watch this episode of the program and others on our YouTube channel. Thank you so much for watching. Happy Democracy Day. Bye-bye.